Peter Coleman, Australian billionaire Mike Cannon-Brookes has started the Fair Dinkum Power movement and gearing up to campaign for a carbon price. Do you support that?
Well, I certainly supported a debate on it, and today, in the speech to the Melbourne Mining Club, my real push was internationally we need to start dealing with this. We've seen it's difficult to deal with it at a national level, and of course we don't want states going out there and setting their own prices in a piecemeal fashion. So I think the debate needs to be held, and we've had a few debates over the last 12 years or so. They've generally ended up in policies not getting pushed forward or being stopped at some point in time. I think we need to have the debate again.
In that debate, will you be pushing for a carbon price though?
Well, I'll be pushing for an appropriate mechanism. If that's a price on carbon, of course today that's what I said. We need a price on carbon. We need to ensure that the most effective energy gets into the system. We don't want to have perverse outcomes where the lowest cost energy supply is competing against renewables, and we end up in a situation where we've invested a lot in renewables but in fact see no benefit from a carbon point of view because we haven't addressed the other part of the equation, which is carbon and the emissions from that.
Who's with you on this?
Well, I think nationally you'll find that certainly companies like ours are in this space. Within Australia, well, we think it's time for Woodside to step up. We think it's time for industry to step up. It's difficult for industries associations to do that themselves. It's time for companies to step up and say what we truly believe the future is. Today was talking about what legacy we want to leave. And importantly, that legacy needs to be one that both our children and our grandchildren are proud that their parents gave to them. And of course, we've got that opportunity now. So I think there's a will to act. The time is now, and we need to start having good policy debate.
You sit on the board of the Business Council. That council campaigned strongly, very strongly, for the repeal of the carbon tax in the past. Will you be using your position on that board to try and change that view of the Business Council?
Well, the Business Council is just one of a number of associations, as you know, I'm involved with. And of course, I'm a member and will have a view on it. The fact that I'm fortunate enough to be on the board says that I can have some insights into the Business Council's thinking, but at the end of the day, I'm just one voice on the Business Council along with all of its members. But I am a voice that's willing to get out there and start talking about what we think the right thing is to do. And so over time, of course, we're hoping that we're going to have a more open debate about this. It doesn't just need to be the Business Council. Today I said, politicians need to be part of this, community needs to be part of this, and industry needs to be part of this.
The Business Council has one of the strongest lobbying voices, particularly within the coalition government. If you have the Business Council on board, surely you can drive this politically. Is it your goal to try and change the official view of the Business Council?
Well, no, not necessarily, and of course we can operate in both worlds quite comfortably. Look, I accept that the Business Council represents many members with diverse views, both in the resources sector, the suppliers like ourselves into the market, and then also the manufacturers, the users of the products. At every point in that, you've got to look at how it affects each member, and each member is going to vote on it. So I'm not going to talk about where the Business Council is going. Hopefully, by coming out and talking about where our view is and talking about it in a very clear and thoughtful way, there will be others who will come behind us and say, yes, we're of the same view, and we'll start to kind of develop momentum over time.
You've said that a bipartisan approach to energy policy and certainty is needed if Australia is to transition to a lower carbon economy. What policies are needed?
Well, there's a myriad of policies, but the first thing is to actually agree on what will our targets be. What are our emissions targets going to be in this country? And you can see a wide variety of views and piecemeal approaches to them. So we have both political parties now with different targets out there in the policy setting. We have states undertaking their own initiatives, incentivising development of renewables at their own state level without an overall policy framework. So look, there's a desire to act, and people are acting today, so we can't deny that. The question now is, let's put a policy framework over the top of it so that we can all be hauling in the same directions. We don't need one-upmanship in states. We don't need partisan politics coming through in this. We need to step back and say, hey, this is bigger than us. This is bigger than us as individuals. These are things that transcend communities. It doesn't matter where you fit in society, it transcends communities. This is a big issue for us to deal with. And the point I made today is whether you believe in the science or not, it really doesn't matter. By the time the science is proven, it will be too late to act. So it's prudent to act today.
Why are you coming out with this today?
Well, you know, we've been thinking about it for some period of time, but we wanted to make sure that when we did start to talk about it, that we had some tangible things already in place. And those things are in place around our joint industry partnerships that we have both in Japan and Korea, here in Australia also, about what we're doing in the university sector here in Australia and supporting research in this area. And then, of course, our own plans around the development of a industrial hub on the Burrup and being able to use hydrogen in conjunction with, or gas in conjunction with renewables to produce hydrogen there. So we're putting the business model together, we were putting all of the relationships together, and today was an opportunity with the Melbourne Mining Club for me to come out and talk about something that really means something to us all.
Is it something that your international partners are looking for? Do they want to see your stance on emissions and climate change?
Absolutely they do, as do many investors. And so we get asked about this a lot, is tell me about the sustainability of your business model, tell me about what's happening in your industry, and tell me what you're doing about a lower carbon future. So that's coming from investors. Equally, many of our customers are dealing with the same issue. So they're the ones who are making choices about the fuels that they use. And they're talking to us and saying, well, what is different? What can you do? We already take LNG from you, but are there other sources of energy that we can use to lower our own carbon footprint? So this transcends beyond simply the borders of Australia. It moves out into our customer base in Asia, and as you know, Asia's they're the fastest growing economies in the world. They're going to be the largest contributors to the growth in carbon, and so it behooves companies like us to get out there today and offer new solutions.
Who are you hoping to get on board with this? To get change, you need more than just the CEO of Woodside talking.
Well, look, the first step is we're taking some self-help steps, and we're doing that through our own research. We're doing it with universities, through our Future Lab program, so that's already up and running. With respect to politicians, we're not really asking a lot from them at the moment, other than for policy certainty. And of course, the big one there is putting a price on carbon, whatever form that is, but there needs to be a price in our view on carbon. So we need them in the boat. But we're also looking at other industry partners, and of course I mentioned the joint industry project we have here in Australia with the big miners around shipping. And I think that's the first policy issue that will come before government. How do you start incentivising large industrial users to start switching to lower carbon energy sources? Now, we've seen it happen domestically. We've seen it happening with panels on rooftops and so forth. We now need to start to see government putting their mind to large industrial consumers and what can government do to help incentivise them to switch to a cleaner fuel base.
Peter Coleman, thank you.
Thank you.